So we are now approaching to the time of the Komnenoi dynasty. And with this dynasty, we can connect new phase in the Byzantine history. And this will be the phase of intensive interaction and competition against the West, whereas before the Byzantines they were themselves in Italy. Now they are going to lose territories in Italy to the point that Westerners started to be active on the Byzantine territories, especially with the First Crusade onward. So this is one factor to consider. Another factor would be Seljuk Turks, Turkmen. And Seljuk Turks, they are Turkish people, they belong to the Turkmen family of the language. And it's the same group that people in Turkmenia, it's a country, right, speak, Tatar people in Russia, people in Russian Caucasus territories like Chechens, they would speak a similar language as Turkish people would speak as well. So this is a powerful group of people, and we are now sort of meeting them for the first time, right? And one of the things about history that it's kind of reflects our Christian philosophy. In our Christian philosophy, I mean, there is always some good of every bad situation. It's very hard to swallow. But if you think about the Russian Revolution, so as a result of the Russian Revolution, there are new martyrs, right? And at the same time, good things, they also have problematic side effects. Like the Byzantines, they took over Bulgaria and they got the common border with the Pechenegs. They lost this buffer state. So it's kind of like in nature, you destroyed something in the forest and whatever, things started to change there to the effect that you are not happy with. So in that, something that can be problematic about Justinian's overextensions. On one hand, wow, it's great. The empire got all those territories in North Africa, and it was good. I think it was a positive thing, but also it comes with new set of the problems. So I'm guessing the takeaway from this that nothing is perfect. So Seljuk Frost, they didn't know that they're going to be new masters of this land at the end of the day. They initially just raided territories, okay, and they were much better fit for this heartland of their future homeland, which is Turkey. Turkey is heartland of Byzantium. So, but they could live there, unlike Arabs who didn't like actually the climate in Anatolia didn't suit them, but for Turks, I mean for Seljuks, it was just fine. What is important that they, as I was saying, they didn't really have this agenda yet. They didn't have this objective to take over Byzantium. It was unthinkable at this point. They just raided territories, and they actually were more concerned with inner Muslim conflicts. Okay, So like with Abbasid Caliphate. So Constantine the Ninth, Monomachus, he didn't really invest a lot, again, arguably by some sources, in army, right? And now, at the end, at the mid of the 11th century, we are identifying the three major outside enemies, external enemies. Normans in Italy, right? Pechenegs and Seljuks.
Didn't the Slavs basically take care of the Pechenegs in the end? They like drove them out of Europe.
No,
And, no.
no. No, Pechenegs were actually destroyed by the Mongols. Yeah, Pechenegs and Polovtsi. And Pechenegs, otherwise known as Patsanaks, there are two names that are used in English. In Russian, there is only one name. Okay, so, and also this time, which of course is asking to be put on your finals, is the split, the final split between the East and West. That happened under Constantine IX's watch, okay, and during Patriarch Michael Kerolarius' tenure, when Latin diplomats, ecclesiastical diplomats, they acted out of line in Constantinople to the point that they, without having even been sanctioned, they on their own excommunicated the Eastern Church, Eastern bishops, for from their point of view, idiosyncrasies, for their wrong views from their perspective. So, and only because they were diplomats, they were saved by Michael IX from being lynched in Constantinople by people who were very furious about their behavior. So in response, they were excommunicated, anathematized. I mean, this was an embassy led by Cardinal Humbert. So this is an important event, but it didn't really play that significance as it plays now. It kind of was a sad episode, and which hopefully would have been healed. It wasn't like basically the end of the day. Okay, so the Macedonian dynasty, the longest dynasty in the Byzantine history, terminated its existence. Okay, at the same time, situation is quite stable in the empire. And there is power vacuum in the empire, right? Because the dynasty came to the end, right? And no new stone rock figure had been identified yet. Okay. So Patriarch Michael Kerolarius was a strong-willing man who pushed ahead his own candidate, who became Michael VI. But I believe it's seldom productive when church really started to get involved with political things, because it would backfire tenfold back to the church. So the Lord said that our kingdom is not of this world. And Michael refused. He started to play with the fire. And I mean by this that he started to save money on the troops. Okay. And as a result, even, I mean, he wasn't happy with their performance. He wasn't happy how they defend the borders and so on. But they came to celebrate his accession to the throne. They didn't get any gifts. It was quite humiliating. So as a result, when they came back, they proclaim an emperor, one of their own type, a soldier emperor, Isaac the First Komnenos. So, and on contrary now, since he was a man set up by the army, he now had to provide for the army. Okay, and now he sort of went to another direction. He started to strip money from officials, from the court officials. And then also dealing with the church increasing power, he put a tap on church land ownership. Okay, and because an issue of church land ownership is very sensitive. Again, I was saying that we need to understand each party in each study. In this sense, church party would be that by owning land, we have some kind of freedom, because we would have our own finances to self-finance, and we also would have independence, a degree of independence, like in Russia in 18th century, as the Russian Emperor Catherine the Great, she stripped off church of land ownership, starting paying salaries instead, and that became as a result, the church became a client of the state. So church depended on the state. It's really backfired big time in the 20th century. So I see this point. At the same time, also the state depends on land, right? State needs land for its own purposes, for well-being of everyone. So as a result, Patriarch Michael Kerularius, I am not sure if he is a saint. I doubt that he ever was officially revealed, glorified, proclaimed a saint. So, but as a result, he died as a confessor, because he was exiled as a result of the conflict. He stood up for church rights, and he died. Okay, so kind of like staining Isaac Komnenos' reputation in this sense. Because I mean, also no one wants to have a conflict with the church, right? Because church is very powerful, and you really calculate your battles if you decide, to how to say, to stand up against church, either in the west or in the east. So you really want to make sure that that's exactly what you want. Okay, so right. And now, like, there are first calls. And first call was that a historical Roman city of Melitene changed hands and came over. I mean, it was taken over by Seljuks. So it's more than just raiding. It's more than just looting. Sort of a city now came over to Seljuk. So they started to control it. Okay. So a problem with Seljuks and problem with any nomads that when you send conventional troops to chase them, you need really have strong cavalry. That's where Armenian light cavalry would come in handy, because they would be able to deal with them, right? Since their tactics, nomads tactics based on shoot and run thing, okay? And when you have conventional troops, you kind of look for a place where you can corner them and destroy them. That's your idea of dealing with nomads. And it's not always possible. And when it is possible, it is not also guarantee, as we will see right in a moment with the Battle of Manzikert. Okay. So a problem with the Battle of Manzikert and a problem with this period that we are entering right now is not in the Battle of Manzikert that is represented, and I also do this as some kind of threshold. It became a very significant event because of the inner instability in the empire. If not the inner instability, the empire would be able to overcome results of the Battle of Manzikert and do just fine and leave it behind, as it was able to do 100 years earlier with the battle when the Bulgarians totally destroyed the Roman army. Whereas at the Battle of Manzikert, just some troops of the Byzantine army were destroyed, and some troops they weren't affected. They hadn't been affected at all. So that's an important thing regarding the Battle of Manzikert. Without having inner problems, constant rivalry between the Byzantine prominent families, the Battle of Manzikert wouldn't have become such a significant marker in the history. Okay, so now we are dealing with Constantine the Tenth, okay, who followed Isaac, and he was from the family of Ducas, another prominent family, and he didn't realize actually necessity of investing into border control, investing into borders, investing in it's easy to say, it's always very easy to criticize, especially with hindsight, and also again sources can be contradicting. So in what sense he was in position to do it, so it's hard to say. But the city of Ani, right, and the city is right now on the Turkish-Armenian border. And it's a very interesting city that even was under Russian control for a number of years before the Bolsheviks surrendered it to the authorities in Ankara, and later on to its who later on became the Republic of Turkey. I would like you to show walls of the city right now, just to have feeling what we are talking about. Okay. Also, it's why I'm talking about the city, because the city surrendered since. Can you see this photo? Yes. Can you? Do you still see my lecture, or do you see the photo?
We still see the lecture.
Okay, fine. Okay. But it's important that those walls that you see, they cannot be defended, because the garrison of the city of Ani didn't have supplies. So they surrendered their city, because they just could not really defend it for substantial amount of time. They would just die there. Okay. So you see also what kind of landscape is there, what kind of landscape we are dealing. And this is the same landscape where the Battle of Manzikert took place. And those are traditional Armenian churches. Okay. Right. Okay, so Constantine X, he got terminally sick, and on his sick bed, he took a word from his wife Eudokia that she would not remarry, because he wanted to keep everything in the family, and he wanted that his little son Michael, who was like a teenager, who was about 14 years old at this time, so that their son Michael would secure the throne. Okay. So, and I was saying earlier today that there are various accounts about the defeat at the Battle of Manzikert, and one of the accounts saying that it was a cousin of this boy, Andronicus Ducas, who actually sent to the troops at the back, at the rear troops, bad information that the emperor, right, that the emperor was killed, Romanus, that he was killed, and actually that troops were defeated. So as a result, the troops at the back started to retreat, and panic happened, right? Again, Atialates, who reported this account, he himself presented at the Battle of Manzikert, but he correctly mentioning a disclaimer. So he puts a disclaimer there that he himself didn't see it. People were saying those things. So figure it out. I'm giving you also flavor what a historian deals with. That's how history is made up. I mean, from all those bits and notes of information. And then people analyze it, then people try to match them against other evidence. And then they would come up with narrative, and then somebody else would also challenge this, saying, listen, you know, I have this piece of information that actually doesn't really fit in this jigsaw puzzle that you produced. Okay, so things started to be even more different, right? Sort of, in a sense. I'm saying different because you are seeing there is reality was changing. Like, think about Saint Basil of Caesarea. He's a universal teacher of the church, one of the very few hierarchs who are called great. We have Saint Basil the Great, Saint Arsenius the Great, and someone else who escaped me. But I mean, there are only very few hierarchs, and he has special service on the January 14th new style with special magnifications for him during the canon. So he's really outstanding hierarch on the level of St. John Chrysostom. So his city was taken over by the Seljuk, and his cathedral was vandalized and looted and so on. Okay, so in this situation, Evdokia decided to breach a promise that she made to her husband, uh, and she married another military man, Roman Diogenes, who became also a stepfather to Michael VII, but also she made herself enemies in Duca's family. Okay, so okay, and I need to. So I need to mute your mics, guys. So maybe if you do it from your end. Uh, right. So Roman was a good choice. It was a good choice, and he put the Seljuk threat high on his list. Okay. So he mounted an expedition against Seljuks. Again, there are various accounts. Some people say that his army was good for nothing. There were elderly men, there were untrained peasants, it's sort of like a laughing stock army. Right. Another accounts say that he actually had so many troops that he only used the elite troops and sent everybody else home. Right. So finally, he was able to corner Sultan Arslan in the areas that we saw. And for him, it always was kind of the same as it's very similar to Nicephorus in Bulgaria. Nicephorus trashed Bulgaria, and he was about to leave, and then he lost his life. And this is quite similar account. So Sultan Arslan, he kind of, what was tragic here, that Sultan Arslan, he didn't really want he didn't want anything. He wanted to save his life and continue to fight against his major objective, right? Continue to fight against the Fatimids. He even before the battle, he had his diplomats offering very honorable peace to the Roman emperor, asking him to part their ways at this point. But since the Roman emperor was so sure about this, right? And this is those quotes there from a book on the Battle of Manzikert, right? That he humiliated this embassy, okay, and he just declined the offer, okay. Right. Let's see.
You ever wonder?
The Battle of Manzikert in 1071 was one of the most significant turning points in medieval history. The Eastern Roman Empire was facing nomadic conquerors as it had done so many times in the past, but this invasion was different. It caused a cascade of events that made the West and the East, the Christian and the Muslim worlds, clash violently, but in a way that truly connected Europe and Asia for the first time. The initial contact between the Byzantine Empire and Islam did not go in the former's favour. The emperors started losing territories to the Caliphate in the first part of the 7th century. The Umayyads and then the Abbasids were pushing their advantage, and even threatened the capital Constantinople on a few occasions. Fortunately for the successors of Rome, the balance of power changed drastically in the middle of the 9th century. The Abbasid Caliphate was struggling to keep centralized rule over its holdings. The Byzantines used this to strengthen their position and restored their control over the Balkans, Anatolia, and northern Syria. In 1045 they conquered the capital of the Armenian Bagratids in modern western Turkey, Ani. Controlling Ani was strategically crucial. On the other hand, losing the traditional buffer zone between the Muslim world and the empire created new problems, and they manifested themselves in the new warlike nomadic force, the Seljuk Turks. The Seljuks were a tribe from Central Asia that adopted Sunni Islam at the beginning of the 11th century. Through a series of wars, they became the masters of this region by the year 1040. Their conquests continued, and in the next 15 years they took control of modern-day Iraq and Iran. The Seljuk Sultanate came into contact with the Fatimid Caliphate and the Byzantine Empire. At the same time, Transcaucasia was vassalized, and that opened a new lane into the Byzantine Empire. In 1054, the Seljuks attacked the Byzantines for the first time by raiding Trebizond. The new ambitious Sultan, Alp Arslan, used this weakness in 1064 to capture ever-important Ani. The empire's defensive strategy relied on a chain of fortresses stretching from the Caucasus to Syria. The fall of Ani opened up territory from Kars to Edessa, and shortly after the fortresses of Malazgirt and Alat near Lake Van were conquered, becoming operational bases for future invasions. In 1067, Antiochia, Melitene, and Caesarea were razed by the Seljuks. The gates to Anatolia were now wide open. Emperor Constantine of the Doukas dynasty passed away in 1067. His widow Eudokia recognized the dire situation the empire faced and was eager to limit the power of the Doukas, so she married a member of a Cappadocian military family, General Romanus Diogenes. The new emperor was anxious to drive the Seljuks away and even planned to take Iran, Iraq, and Syria. In March of 1068, Romanus amassed a new army and marched towards Caesarea. He received news that near Caesarea had been razed by the Turks and was able to intercept part of their army near Tefrike, where he gained a complete victory. By 1069 the situation started to get out of hand, as a new raiding army attacked Melitene and then Iconium, deep in Byzantine territory. Romanus knew that he had to end the problem and started gathering a large force. At the same time, Alp Arslan was fighting against the Fatimids across the Levant. The Sultan was not sure that he could fight on two fronts, so he sent an emissary to the Byzantines. The Seljuks promised to stop their raiding, but the Sultan was not able to control every vassal tribe, so minor raids continued. Romanus kept recruiting troops and adding new mercenaries to his force. Historical sources diverge wildly from the very modest 40,000 to the fantastic 400,000, but it doesn't seem possible that he could have gathered more than 100,000. 20,000 troops stayed in Constantinople and Thrace, as the empire was also at war with the Normans of Sicily, making an attack on its Balkan holdings possible. The Byzantine army was truly multinational, as it included Normans, Cumans, Bulgars, Syrians, Armenians and Slavs. Serving in the Byzantine army was both prestigious and profitable, so emperors were able to choose from the best the medieval world had to offer. In February of 1071, Romanus sent an emissary to Alp Arslan to renew the treaty, and as the latter was besieging Fatimid-controlled Aleppo, he happily agreed. However, the emperor's plan was more cunning, and he embarked on the campaign against the Seljuks in March, which probably means that his ambassadors were spies judging the strength of Alp Arslan's army.
Why the US Privacy Commission wants this new super lens banned. This is the first reasonably priced monopoly.
The Byzantine emperor planned to take control of Seljuk fortresses near Van to stop future raids. In July, Romanus reached Theodosiopolis. The Sultan learned that a significant Byzantine force was on the move towards strategic Manzikert and Alat. He abandoned the siege of Aleppo and moved into modern-day Iran, where 10,000 warriors joined his army. This swift movement allowed Alp Arslan to hide from the Byzantine scouts and travel via a route unknown to them. Romanus ignored his general's advice to await reconnaissance on Seljuk forces and moved towards Manzikert. The emperor divided his army and sent 30,000 to defend the passage to the west of Lake Van, as that was the direction from which he expected the Seljuks to counterattack. He was sorely mistaken. Alp Arslan used his army's mobility and advantage in scouting to move around the eastern banks of Van. The mountains to the north of the lake helped cover this maneuver, and he was able to attack the secondary Byzantine force from the north. We don't know much about this short battle near Alat, but it seems that the Byzantines were surprised, as they expected the attack from the south and their positions were not suited to defend against an attack from another direction. As Seljuk spies were able to spread the news that the emperor's army was already defeated, the Byzantine force near Alat began its retreat to central Anatolia despite not suffering many losses. Meanwhile, Romanus took Malazgirt on the 23rd of August and began moving towards Alat. The Byzantines still suffered from a lack of reconnaissance, while Alp Arslan was informed about the fall of Malazgirt. On the 24th of August, the Seljuks destroyed a few Byzantine units sent to scout ahead. Alp Arslan again moved around the mountain to get a battlefield more favourable to his cavalry-heavy army. The two forces finally encountered each other on the 25th of August. Sources claim that the Seljuk Sultan sent envoys to negotiate a peace, but Romanus was confident in his numbers and also thought that his secondary force would soon return and help surround the enemy. So the emperor stated that he would talk peace only in the Seljuk capital of Ray. Romanus sent a messenger to the Second Army with an order to attack the next day and ordered his forces to build camp fortifications. Seljuk horse archers harassed this camp throughout the night. On the next day, Romanus formed up his army to begin the battle. The 50,000-strong Byzantine force was divided into four groups. The Varangian Guard and Armenians were in the centre under the emperor's command. Turkic, Syrian and European mercenaries formed the flanks, while the Byzantine feudal levy, led by Andronikos Doukas, were in reserve, with orders to support the position that was put in the most danger. The Seljuk army had only around 30,000 troops. It created a crescent with its extreme flanks protruding forward, while its centre, commanded by Alp Arslan, stayed back. Romanus continually moved forward, trying to get into a pitched battle, but the Seljuks were avoiding him and used the usual nomadic tactic of hit and run. The Seljuk center moved back, while the flanks were trying to encircle the Byzantine wings. By the end of the afternoon, Romanus captured Alp Arslan's camp, but as dusk was getting closer, he ordered a retreat to his fortified camp. The emperor's order created confusion, and in the dark, it seemed that his standard had fallen. The Seljuks used this distraction to attack the enemy's right flank with all of their forces. Andronicus Ducas was meant to help, but his family was feuding with the emperor, so reserve forces never arrived, and the Byzantine right flank was utterly destroyed. By advancing so much against the Seljuks, the Byzantine flanks and center had lost their cohesion, so Romanus himself also failed to support against the attack. The Byzantine left was convinced that the emperor was dead, and so retreated towards Manzikert, while all of Alp Arslan's forces attacked and surrounded the center. Although the emperor's Varangian guard defended valiantly and killed many enemies, this group was also crushed by nightfall. An ordinary Seljuk soldier made the emperor his hostage, and Alp Arslan's troops chased the remainder of the Byzantine army throughout the next day.
So, to prove that it never was quiet, or very seldom was relatively quiet, the same year, right, the city of Bari, where St. Nicholas is, and where you can still see this Norman basilica, where he's actually, to be precise, like 60+% of his relics are. The Normans took the city, right? So now it's beginning of the end of Byzantine Italy. And no one would give you breaks. So Hungarians also, they didn't sit idle. Okay, so Hungarians also wanted their share of luck. And Byzantines successfully tried to use their grand strategy, supporting one of the pretenders there. So, and also to make Hungarians part of the Byzantine Commonwealth. But now something that seems to be insignificant, but which in fact was a foreshadow of the times to come, because Normans, they came out of subordination to their Byzantine commander, and they wanted to carve part of the territory for themselves, right? But this is something that became a new reality in 100 years when Crusaders started to set up their own states on the Byzantine territory. Okay. So while Roman was in captivity, as was mentioned, Sultan Arslan didn't really interest in the whole incident. He happily released Roman, taking his word that he would pay him whatever he promised. So, but then Roman was apprehended by the Ducas family. He was duped, right? Because now kind of his wife gave a word that she would not marry anymore. Now Ducas gave a word that they wouldn't do any harm to him. So, but he was blind and very pedestrian, very mediocre, to say the most. Emperor of Ducas family was set up on the throne, who was not up to the job. But a person who was up to the job was now blinded and discarded. Okay, so that's a problem. And now we are dealing, besides all those external threats, we are dealing with a very high level of inner instability in the empire, where various people claim the empire to themselves. Plus, they would bring in with themselves, as Nicephorus Botaniates did, they would also use Seljuks to help them to install themselves. And that what in 100 years' time happened when Crusades came to Constantinople, right? Because the Fourth Crusade came by an invitation of a Byzantine pretender to the throne. But now Nicephorus Botaniates, he would take Seljuks with them, and Seljuks would take Byzantine cities for him. But then Nicephorus kind of would forget about them, and Seljuks would stay there, becoming masters of Byzantine cities, to the point that the city of Nicaea, which is like 6 hour, 7 hour car drive from Constantinople, is now became a capital of a Seljuk sultan. Okay, so and now we are at the time of the new dynasty, at the time that ended this period of inner instability, the time of Alexius Komnenos, whom we will meet tomorrow. Thank you very much. So.